Well, this is Medina from Arise Humanity on YouTube and Soul Family on Rumble. And I am very honored to have our guest today, who is a well-known face for Australian people, but for my audience who are not Australian, this is Pete Evans. He is a Australian chef. And I noticed in mainstream media, Pete, like you say, he was once Australia's one of his most beloved restaurateurs until you spoke your truth. But anyway, and then he was a television presenter on the competitive cooking show in Australia, My Kitchen Rules, left the television industry in 2020. He is now located in a property in Byron area, Birrell Creek, I believe it is, which is located inland a few hours from Byron Bay. And you have a sustainable property called the Evolved Sanctuary, marketed as featuring totally sustainable living. And so that's really exciting. Really wanting to talk to you about that and what you're doing. But first of all, Pete, I thought we would perhaps chat about your very eventful and adventurous and colourful journey so far in this earthly incarnation. So, you know, you've been able to sort of navigate two separate worlds for quite a period of time, which is the 3D matrix mainstream media type narrative, and then as well as at the same time having your own beliefs in an alternative reality, which is having an awareness of all the more expanded consciousness aspects of life, which are not part of that conservative mainstream belief system. So how was it navigating those two worlds for you?
Probably like it is for everybody, we live in a dualistic reality where, I think the core question we need to ask ourselves, who am I? And that might seem quite trivial or quite basic, but I think it's the fundamental question, because whether you refer to the matrix or the mainstream world, when we're born into this world, we generally take on our beliefs and traits of our parents or whoever looks after us, plus the culture, plus our family lineage or a heritage or a geographical location, and that basically shapes us, I would say, predominantly as to who we are. But is that really who we are? And exactly. I always come back to the question of, who am I? Who am I if I didn't have my parents' beliefs? Who am I if I didn't have the cultural beliefs? Who am I if I wasn't influenced by the educational system or the mainstream media or for friends or colleagues or whatever it may be? Who am I? And I think that's the fundamental question. And I've been asking that for a very long time now. And when you start to ask yourself that question, then you create certain paths in which, for personal discovery and remembrance of who was I prior to the programming. And I honestly think it's a state of remembrance and surrendering and letting go, and not taking it all so seriously that people get caught up in the matrix, if, as you mentioned it, or the mainstream world, and the us versus them. It's saying, yeah, you can play that role if you want, and there's nothing wrong with playing that role, believing that there's people that control us. But, at the end of the day, that isn't reality unless you choose it to be reality. So, I've had a wonderful adventure, still am having a wonderful adventure with that basic question of who am I in this earthly journey, as you mentioned.
Fantastic. Oh, that's a great way of looking at it. Was it hard when you were in the midst of the storm, the eye of the storm, and you had all the media attention and things like that? Was it hard to maintain a sense of that, who am I, in the midst of all that? Because that would be a real spiritual test, I would imagine.
Not really, because I saw very early on what the mainstream media is. It's an industry. It's a business. It is what it is, It's there to create a narrative or narratives in which they would like to, again, program and dictate in a way of how they think society should function. You know, and once you see it for what it is, you see it's 99% nonsense. So what they say about you is complete nonsense anyway. So how could it ever affect you, knowing it's like you know, when you're at the circus and if you got pulled out of the crowd or the audience to go up there with the magician or the clowns or whatever it is and be part of that, you know they're going to take the piss out of you, and they're going to make fun of you for their narrative. You know, we've all seen it. We've all been to those the old school circuses where they pull someone out of the audience and the clowns have fun with them or whatever it may be. You know, that's what that is. The mainstream media, I believe, anyway, to a large degree, it's just a circus. So when they're poking fun of somebody, it's the same thing. You know, how could you ever take it seriously? Just laugh at it. It's just like, oh yeah, I see what you're doing. It's to get clickbait headlines and more conversation going now on their social media sites, because that's how these businesses run. And yeah, so it can't affect you unless you choose to play the victim. And if you choose to play the victim, then obviously you've chosen that. You can then blame somebody for your emotional state or your position in which they attack you on, and the list goes on and on. So if we don't allow victim consciousness or victim mentality in that space, then again, it's just a game. And I chose to play it, and I thought I played it pretty well, and continue to play it pretty well. And hopefully other people see the game for what it is, see the circus, see the nonsense, see the sensationalism, see the magic tricks that are being played on people, see the spells that are being cast. And, you know, through discernment, you can choose to believe that, or you can choose to look at it like you're reading a science fiction novel or a fairy tale or whatever it may be, that it isn't true. It's just a story that somebody has created. It's
absolutely.
Like when you read a science fiction novel set in the future, you know, you know that you're reading somebody else's stream of consciousness that they've put into paper. You know, same thing with mainstream media. Or if you choose to, it's a story that somebody has made up for their financial or other agendas gain, or benefit, I should say.
Well, I still think that you were very brave to be able to navigate it. So well done. Because, you know, putting your energy and your consciousness into that mix it all helps with the expansion of consciousness of the collective. So, you know, I really appreciate that you did that.
well, my wife always says, you know, it's consciousness wants to, it doesn't want to experience everything. It experiences everything. You know, consciousness doesn't judge. There's no adjudicator that says this is right, this is wrong. You know, consciousness is just infinite possibilities that we choose to create in the human form or any other form or life form that's out there. And that's how I see it anyway. That's how I feel it, is consciousness just wants to, it just is an experience of unlimited possibilities. And again, mainstream narrative, that's just one of the expressions of consciousness. The freedom movement is another expression of consciousness. People that don't care about, that's another expression. Nature. You think the birds that are flying around where I live at the moment give a fuck about what's going on in the mainstream world like human beings do? They don't care. They're expressing their own consciousness, and they want to eat, they want to reproduce, they want to drink water, and they want to have shelter from the storm, and they want to sing, and they want to play, and they want to fly, and they want to do all the things that bring them harmony and bring them joy. And most of it obviously is instinctual and intuitive, and they are what they do. Same with the trees. They grow and then they sway in the wind, and they go through this process every year of shedding their leaves and then growth. And every single being on the planet, I believe, that's what we're here to do, is to grow. And in harmony with our species design. And there will be death. There will be some trees that won't weather the storm, as we're witnessing at the moment through this really interesting period of human history. And others will drop their seeds, or however the trees reproduce, and new ones will pop up. And again, they'll just keep expressing themselves. And human beings will keep expressing themselves in a multitude of ways, an infinite amount of ways: good, bad, challenging, traumatic, loving, aggressive, all of these things. And it's all perfect. It's all perfect, Yeah. Even the things that we dislike are all perfect, because it gives us a mirror or a point on the map or the compass to say, okay, well, that's one path we can choose.
Yeah.
Does my intuition want to pursue that and follow the herd or follow the crowd or whatever it is? Or is my intuition guiding me in a different direction from my sister, my brother, my parents, my colleagues, my friends? Am I going to just forge my own journey and have the trust and surrender to my intuition and accept whatever happens from my choices is my responsibility and mine alone? So, yeah, I think it's a gift to be on this planet at this particular point in time, because we're definitely given so many opportunities to see other people's choices and how they live, individually and collectively. And from that, we can discern what suits us. What paths we would like to take, either from the observation of how others live their lives, or our internal compass, which really guides us, and to keep taking one step in front of another and continue down our own individual and unique paths, which may not resonate with others, but that's okay.
Yes. How much do you think the shift that's happening at the moment, this huge transition that's happening for humanity, how accelerated is it? How much change do you see happening at the moment in terms of this expansion and sort of like a shift from old ways of being to this new, some people call it the new golden age, the new earth, whatever you want to term it. How much of a shift do you think is happening right now? And do you think it's already happened?
I don't like to use that terminology myself, personally, because I don't believe that there's a shift happening or there's a greater consciousness that's coming through us. That's an interesting thought pattern that people have, and I'm not dismissing it. It's just it doesn't resonate with me. Sure. I believe that, as I just said, everything's perfect already.
Sure.
Many people are waiting for, if only this happens, if only a certain amount of people get to this level of spiritual maturity, then we're all free, we're all saved. I think that's fucking nonsense personally.
Yeah.
Whereas my belief is, if we choose it individually, we're already there. And again, consciousness doesn't care.
So how do you, I think you're
for us to be enlightened. We're all enlightened.
Yes.
Every single one of us on the planet is again absolutely perfect where they are right now. So the shift is it's an interesting terminology, because part of that is that we're not safe and trusting in where we are right now. Sure, whereas I think through all of history, all of consciousness's timeline, and it's eternal, so even that is a paradox, everything has been absolutely perfect. So I think there's definitely more and more people that are curious to learn more about themselves. And I think that's always been that. But I think over the last few years, it's definitely made people question maybe a little deeper as to what this reality actually has always been and will always be, but have been a little maybe caught up in the external instead of the internal. But again, there's the paradox there, because I don't think the future is going to be any different from the past, because everything has always been so beautiful and chaotic and transformative. Every single cell in our body is changing all the time. Its frequency is always changing. We're always in flux. The planet is always in flux. It's like, so with that notion that we're going to get somewhere, the planet's going to be safe one day if only this and this happens. I think that can be a little childish in thought, and I always go back to a lot of the spiritual books that I've read over the years, and they say, just be here now, be here now, and observe yourself, observe the world in which we inhabit, and it's up to you whether you choose to see the beauty, the perfection, the in the external and in the internal. And it just comes down to a choice, to be honest with you. And again, I may have triggered a lot of people, and that's okay. And I may have inspired somebody. That's okay. I might have threatened somebody's beliefs, and that is okay. I might have reiterated somebody's belief, and that is okay. In this world that we're in at the moment, a lot of people are looking for guidance and gurus and people to tell them that it's okay. Again, that's a very disempowering position, in my opinion, to place ourselves in. Instead of the internal belief and trust and acceptance that we are, all of us, are expressions of consciousness. And when we go into the deep levels of that, and I'm not religious, I don't follow any religious doctrine, but the only word that I can say is we are all God. The universe is that God, not a white dude in the sky or a different colored person in the sky or gender in the sky, because we are all of that. Nature is all of that. The stars, the galaxies, the soil, the core, everything is that consciousness expressing itself. So we have, as I mentioned at the start, a dualistic nature in our reality, where and many people believe there's us and there's an ascended master or ascended being or a god or a figurehead or whatever it may be. Whereas in actual fact, when we get to the root, the true nature of reality, we are, every single one of us, and not just human beings, but every single thing in eternity is that. And I've had some experiences over the years where I've journeyed into those spaces to remember that being the ultimate universal truth is that we are all God, every single thing that exists and doesn't exist. But at the same time, we have this little paradox where we feel like we're an individuated piece of that consciousness or individuated piece of reality or of God. So that can cause confusion and sometimes frustration and sometimes and separation and all of this where that isn't true.
Yes. So I completely resonate with everything that you've just said. And did it take you, your years now to fully feel the depths of what you're talking about? Did it take your life to be able to evolve that perception of how you are in reality? Did it take time, or have you always had a sense of that But do you think your journey helped you to get to this point where you have that awareness now?
Yeah, I think everybody does. And I'll go back to that remembrance. You know, many people believe that when we come into this earthly journey that we have that knowing. We know it.
And then you sort of lose it along the way sometimes.
You know,
some people do.
I think it's Graham Hancock that says we're a species that has amnesia. You know, we've forgotten that all of us are that. Yeah, even the Bill Gateses, the Klaus Schwabs, and the politicians that you despise, all of them are like that. You know, and it's that remembrance. So to answer your question about the journey, yeah, like everybody, it's an accumulation of choices and events in our life that we can question very deeply or very shallowly. I don't know if that's a word, but
I think it is.
Yeah, and some people like to explore these realms about themselves. Who am I? Some people love it. Some people couldn't think of anything worse to do with themselves. You know? And that's so cool too. You know, again, there's no right or wrong in this adventure we call life. You know, there's so much you know, especially in religious teachings and spiritual teachings, you know, there's often some fear put into some of those I don't even want to call them teachings, but doctrines or manuscripts or books or whatever it may be that create this state of fear, you know, like sin and whatever else it is, you know, that you will not get to heaven if you do this. You know, it's like,
there's a lot of that in religion.
Really? Heaven or hell, you know, that whole concept, and people talking about entities entering their bodies and attachments and all of this sort of stuff. It's like, wow, like, do you not trust yourself enough that you get caught up in these notions of external forces that can control you? Whether it be a spiritual entity or whatever it may be, demons, the list goes on and on, you know. Sure, demons exist if you believe in them. If you have a deep held belief that there's entities out there that will attach to you and take over, you know, probably you will manifest that into your life, you know, not probably in a way that's tangible scientifically, but like everything in our life, what we fear the most generally we'll have the opportunity to face. And part of my journey has been to identify as many of my fears and insecurities as I have had, and ask the question, why do I have this fear? Could be a fear of public speaking, could be a fear of sharks, it could be a fear of the agendas, it could be a fear of not being enough, and then finding out what the root cause or the first time that appeared. Was it my parents that had fear of not being financially sufficient? Was it my parents that were fearful of the government? Was it my parents that were fearful of public speaking? Did I have an experience when I was younger in life where people ridiculed and laughed at me and humiliated me when I gave that book report when I was age 8 in front of the class, and that stayed with me because I never want to get into that position again where people are laughing at me? Oh, I better not speak for fear of what other people might judge me from what I'm saying. You know, and we know that public speaking is one of people's greatest fears, as is death. You know, and I had that fear early on, public speaking, being seen, being heard. Why do I have that? Let's bury down into that, because that's a really fucking weird thing to hold.
Right. Yeah. Well, you did really well because you had such a huge profile on mainstream media. So you certainly knocked that one on the head.
Well, you look at nature. Does a magpie or a kookaburra think about how it's going to sing its beautiful song for fear of judgment?
Yeah.
You know, we've got these baby magpies that have been born a about 4 or 5 or 6 months ago, and they're learning their song at the moment.
Aren't they beautiful, the songs?
Oh, but it just goes to show, like, imagine if they had the thought pattern or the belief that they're
being
not,
judged. Their singing is being judged.
Exactly. You know, would they ever sing?
Yeah,
And so human beings get caught up in these potential phobias and fears and insecurities, which are just nonsense. At the root cause, fear of death. I mean, once you go through your own death experience, which I have many, many times, then you get to have that understanding that death isn't the end. You know, it's just another expression of consciousness. And you, no doubt, well, you won't go back as Pete Evans when he dies as part of the soup of consciousness. You know, I won't be floating around out there. I will just become that back to the consciousness, but without my identity as being part of it. And that freaks a lot of people out, because they're like, oh, what if I haven't done enough in this lifetime? I want to come back and be reincarnated. Like, you don't get reincarnated, in my personal belief from my experiences. No, this is the one earthly adventure you get, but at the same time, you're also, because we are all consciousness, I'm you, you're me, we've already lived everybody else's past lives and future lives. And that's a big one to grasp. So there's then a lot of people go into fear of, well, what have I done in this life? What have I achieved? What was my purpose? I should have done this. I should have done that. And at the end of the day, you shouldn't have done anything other than what you've done.
Yes.
That's you and your uniqueness. Just be. You know, it's not like a set of boxes that you have to tick along your earthly journey. To make it, to be enlightened, to be this. All you need to do, and you don't even need to do it, is just be. Absolutely. And it could be for a day, it could be for 100 years.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who cares?
Well, that's very liberating. And also, you know, it's joyful, you know, everything that you've been talking about. When you hold that sort of perspective on reality, it's joyful and it's freeing. So you exude a lot of joy, actually, with everything, you know, that you, and I can see where it comes from, stemming from the foundation of what you've been talking about. So that's interesting. So what are the things for you that bring you the greatest joy in this lifetime that you like to tap into to, you know, express that joyful essence? I know you love food. You obviously love surfing. So tell me about some of the things that bring you the greatest joy.
Yeah, I'm very happy to share that. And it's definitely, there's a beautiful book called Being Human by Martin Ball. And he's a very dear friend of mine, and he's written many books. And his background was a facilitator for 5-MeO-DMT, which is the strongest psychedelic in the world that we know of. And he wrote a beautiful little book called Being Human. It only takes a day to read. And what I like about what he talks about is that we have preferences. Each and every one of us has preferences of what we like, you know. And I think one of our, I don't like to use the word purpose, but I think what can help us create more joy in our life is to find our preferences that we inherently love to do, and do them as often as possible.
Yes, it's what we resonate with.
It's a very simple premise. And another dear friend of mine, Helen Patteran, who's a wonderful naturopath, she said, find something that requires nobody else's participation, that you can do on your own, and do that as often as possible as well. So you don't rely on somebody else to play tennis with you or go to the movies with you. Find that one thing or many things in your life that you can do without anybody else have an excuse as to why you can't do it. And then
Yeah.
I'll just
Can
finish
I
with
say too, can I just say too that so it's effortless. It doesn't require any effort. You know, when you do something that is effortless, it sort of suspends time. And it's like there's no time and time disappears and actually usually goes really fast because you're doing something that's like effortless. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we've got our preferences, and if we don't know what they are, the things that bring us joy and passion and laughter and contentment and peace, neutrality, then what you might like to do is go back to when you were a child and remember the things as a child that brought you joy. Was it dancing? Was it painting or drawing? Was it going to the movies? Was it being in the garden, being in nature, playing with a dog, going on walks, going under a waterfall? Was it putting your feet in the ocean? Was it playing in the waves of the ocean? Was it going to bed early? Was it whatever it may be? Was it eating something that just brought pure joy to you? And then finding these things and doing them as often as possible. This morning I live about 50-minute drive to an hour drive to the beach, and I knew we were doing this conversation, so for me to be ready, I choose to go for a surf in the morning. If there was no surf, I always check the report the day before to see if there's swell, which way the wind's going, where the tides are, and whether it's going to be worth my hour drive there and an hour drive back to get into the ocean and dance on nature, as we do with surfers. And so I woke up at 5:15, drove down the beach, and the beach looked pretty crappy, but I thought, oh, there's another little spot that might be out of the wind. So I pulled up there, and there were a few guys out and girls, and I paddled out there, caught 10 waves, big smile on my face, come back in. So my cup is already full for the day. And I tend to do that as often as I can, because I know that going for a surf for me fills my cup. It overflows my cup. And if I can start my day with my cup already overflowed, and I'm not saying that we need to do activities or sporting pursuits to fill our cup. People start their day with a meditation or gratitude, a simple, what am I grateful for today, when they wake up, and that can fill their cup straight away. And the other things I love to do is interview people. I'm very rarely on this side of the interview space. I have a podcast channel, and I've done 500 interviews over the last however many years, and I love being in this space of where you are today, of the person asking the questions, because I see this as my classroom. When I do a podcast or an interview, it's my classroom. I saw my educational 12 years at school was pretty useless. And I came to the realization pretty quickly that what they were teaching me had no bearing whatsoever on the practicalities of my life.
You did get very good at daydreaming. I used to gaze out the window and daydream. So I got good at that.
Well, I used to wag school a lot so I could go for a surf, because I knew what they were teaching me would have no relevance for what I wanted to do in life, I love to interview people. I love to go surfing. I like adventure sports, skiing, snowboarding, wakeboarding, skydiving, anything where brings me a smile. I love hanging out with my children and my wife. I like making love to with my wife. I like cooking dinner. I love it when somebody else, like my wife, cooks me a beautiful meal too. I love sitting around the table, telling stories or being in silence. I love watching movies. I like watching really good television. I like laughing. I like building a fire. I like connecting with new people. I like conversation. So on talking about the boxes that we can tick in our life, if I have so many boxes that bring me joy, and they're very easy to put a tick in most days. And I love, personally, I also love watching the agenda playing out at the moment. I find it to be the most entertaining sitcom that you could ever watch in reality, whether
it's an intense movie, isn't it?
the geopolitical landscape with Biden and Trump and our Trudeau and Macron and Putin and Xi Jinping, that in itself, that is quite entertaining. ain't boring at all. I love watching what's happening in the financial system with the emergence of Bitcoin and what's going on in that space. You know, I
Yes.
probably read about half an hour every single day about Bitcoin and the financial institutions and that game that's being played out right now. Like the geopolitical game, it's a game. The financial system, it's a game. I love reading and learning about dietary health and biohacking and natural therapies, because I see that as such a wealth of information if we choose, and I'll use that word precisely there, if we choose to be in this earth suit for as long as possible, and that's my choice. My choice is to inhabit, Pete Evans, this earth suit for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Because I just freaking love it.
You love it. There's a curiosity there about life that shines through. You love life and you're curious about all sorts of things. And I think that curiosity is a key, isn't it?
Well, I think, you know, we've been through such a huge sort of technological revolution or evolution over the last however many decades. And to think, I mean, I've just turned 50 this year, and my intention is to get to at least 120. So imagine the next 70 years, what human beings are going to produce, what AI is going to produce, how radical some of the changes that we're going to be a part of or not a part of or witness. Why would you want to tap out now? You know?
I'm looking forward to the flying cars. That'll be really cool.
I'm sure they already exist in
Yes,
somebody's basement somewhere. And you know, how cool is it that we get to experience this?
Yeah.
You know, and it may not be to everybody's preference or timeline how these things create, but at the end of the day, again, it's just consciousness expressing itself, and through that we have human beings creating technology. We now have technology creating technology, and I think we're in such a beautiful time of human evolution and human observation and witnessing where we are on the planet, that I will do everything in my power to be around for as long as I can to not only observe, but to be an active participant in the manifestation of, or co-manifestation of, what happens. And that might be on a large scale, it could be on a very small scale. And I don't really care, to be honest with you. I've got no grand delusions of influencing the world, because, you know, that can be a pitfall and a trap that many can fall into. Whereas, you know, let's just see what happens.
Absolutely. Well, you have your sanctuary, the Evolve Sanctuary, I believe it's called, which is like a retreat that you have available, and you also are very tapped into food and you know, food as medicine, as you have on your t-shirt. So, you know, how important do you think food is to this whole grand scheme of things?
Well, I think food is the lowest hanging fruit, to be honest with you, for long-term regenerative health. It's generally the easiest thing that people can change in their life. When we discussed before, emotional belief patterns and the way that we run our computer, our earth suit, is based off our programming and our beliefs. So they can be a little potentially more challenging for people to delve into, to rewire themselves if they choose to, and go into a different path, removing some of these insecurities and fears, as I was talking about before. So that can be quite confrontational for people. And there's many different methodologies and therapies out there for people to pursue that if they choose to. There's meditation, there's different types of therapists out there. I mentioned psychedelics before, very powerful tool for people to see all their nonsense and bullshit programming if they choose to. It can be through contemplation, it can be through reading different books that highlight these types of different pathways that people can go down. So I think that's it can be easy to do those. It can be easy for people to change those belief patterns if they choose to, and it can be quite difficult as well. But food, I think, is the lowest hanging fruit, and because cooking at the end of the day is a list of ingredients cooked in a certain method for a desired result. It's so simple. Like my wife and I, we had steak and fish last night for dinner, and she did a little rocket salad with some avocado and a simple dressing, and that took us all of 10 minutes to create. 2 seared steaks, 2 seared pieces of fish. I made a little sauce out of olive oil, garlic, and tomato for the fish with some lemon juice. And for the steak, we just had it with some salt and pepper and a pickle on the side, and then her beautiful salad. And seriously, it was 10 minutes. We lean more towards a carnivorous diet. So healthy animal fats and proteins make up our core of our plate, and then we see vegetables and fruits as like supplementations. In every medical textbook, there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate, so that should tell people exactly what our bodies need. There's essential fats and proteins is what we need in our bodies, and where do we get that from? Predominantly is animal fats and proteins. Our indigenous ancestors from all around the world, this is how they lived, it's how they evolved, it's how they thrived, with very little ill health, either mental, spiritual, and or physical. So if we take cues from our species that actually knew how to be healthy, they were hunters and gatherers. And I think if people debate that, then so be it. But it's sort of common sense. It's so simple. You know, this human experience should be simple. And when we take our cues from human beings that worked it out, and if you're curious, the work of Weston A. Price, he wrote a book called Physical and Nutritional Degeneration about 100 years ago with his wife, and they studied indigenous cultures all around the world, the indigenous Australians from Africa, Eastern Europe, Pacific Islands, everywhere. And the one thing they had in common was a healthy amount of animal fats and proteins. And what he discovered along his journey was that no cancer, no depression, no anxiety, no heart disease, no fillings in their teeth, no chronic health issues. And fast forward to now, and Robert Kennedy Jr. said the other day that in America, on average, every American is taking, on average, 4 pharmaceutical medications for their illnesses. And, you know, it doesn't have to be that way. And you know, clean water, good food, species-specific diet. We call it paleo. Paleo just means old. So if anyone gets triggered by the word paleo, paleo just means old. Taking our cues from our ancient ancestors that had great health. It's as simple as that. So I think food is so simple for us to change if we choose to, and it's just a choice. You know? And eating this way can be equally as delicious as eating any other way. So yeah, there's food for thought. But everybody has a choice as to how they fuel their body and what brings them joy. And when I was talking about preferences earlier, you know, a lot of people comfort eat or emotionally eat. So the question is, if you struggle or have challenges with eating normal food that brings you joy and vitality and health, and you seem to be heading down a path or have been on a path for quite some time where you're making, I guess, I don't like to use the word poorer, but food choices or eating choices or dietary choices that are leading to chronic inflammation or ill health in your body, just understand that there is a simple correction or a simple path that you can take. But we then get down to the fundamentals that I've been talking about since we started, which is what our belief systems are. Do we love ourselves unconditionally? If we love ourselves unconditionally, then why would we slowly poison our bodies or quickly poison our bodies? What is there self-worth issues? Is there self-love issues? Is there victim mentality issues? Is there this, that, and the other? Or does it go back to a time where you were rewarded with junk food for winning the sporting activity that you were playing in, whether it be netball, soccer, cricket, football, whatever it may be? Or did you perform well at school and you got an A or top of the class, and your parents or grandparents celebrated by taking you to McDonald's or something like that? So you equate.
Or your parent only they gave you love through, you know, cooking good meals for you, but they didn't express their love in any other way, or something like that.
Yeah. And again, that comes back to the question, who am I? Who am I? Who are my beliefs? Why am I attracted to junk food? You know, sure, it tastes good, but what I would call real food tastes equally as good, if not better. You know, the steak and fish from salad we cooked last night, fuck, it was just, you know, you go to a restaurant, pay money for that, and you don't need a chef like me to cook it. It was 3 minutes on one side, 3 minutes on the other, salt and pepper, slice it up, eat it. And the dressing for the fish was 1 tomato chopped up, 1 garlic clove chopped up, thrown in the pan at the end of the cooking of the fish with some olive oil and some lemon juice. Like it's seriously so simple. So I think food is. I did an interview a very long, maybe 5 years ago, with a shaman who was taking people on ayahuasca ceremonies, and he was also a neuroscientist, so he studied the brain. And this was a fascinating tidbit that he shared with me on one of the podcasts. Is he said, because there's a lot of people out there in the spiritual community that tend to eat in a way that could be vegan, vegetarian, and will refuse to eat animal foods.
Yeah.
And he was taught.
Would it be too sometimes that people find it hard to digest? You know, they say there's that blood type, I think it's an A blood type, that is not good at digesting meat, they say. Well,
that's nonsense.
Nonsense, yeah.
That's fucking nonsense.
So might it be more digestive issues within their stomach or something that's not allowing them to digest the meat properly, if they find it hard to digest meat, for example?
Yeah, well, there would probably be an emotional cause that's causing the digestion problem, based around the meat. No, it's not the meat that's causing the issue. Sure,
right. Because you hear people saying that, so I'm just.
Oh yeah, because they've got to have a belief in something to blame other than we're a human species.
Yeah.
Right. Our digestion, our system is designed in a specific way to do what it needs to do.
Yes.
Right. So, but what he was saying, which I thought was fascinating, was when you eat this way, you go into basically like a ketogenic lifestyle. Ketogenic means burning fat for fuel. Human beings have 2 operating systems, or 2 fuels that we can use to create energy for our body and to sustain energy and to live, basically. We have glucose, which comes in the form of carbohydrates and sugars, or we have fats, and fats are ketones, okay? And our bodies run far more efficiently when we burn fat for fuel. And the best analogy is, imagine lighting a fire and all you've got is kindling, like twigs, small pieces of wood. And if you wanted to keep that fire going all day or all night, if you're just burning kindling, you would have to keep putting more and more kindling on that fire pretty much non-stop. So that equates to what our modern Western-style diets are these days, especially promoted through the Dietitians Association, which is basically a kindling burning fire, which is high grains, high glucose. So we're constantly burning
that food
fuel.
Triangle that they try and push.
Yeah. Whereas the opposite side of that is, if you've ever built a fire, once it's burning, throw on some big logs and that fire will burn for a very long time at a very even rate. So that's what fat in our diets, ketogenic approach or mild ketogenic lifestyle offers us, is the ability to, 1, eat less, okay, eat less frequently, and to keep our fires burning, our internal combustion, keeping all our systems going very long for a very long period of time. So when people eat a high carbohydrate diet with the kindling as the analogy. What happens is their blood sugars go up, they go down, they crash, they go up, they go down, they crash, they go up and down. Whereas when you're having a ketogenic style or paleo approach, is that your blood sugar levels aren't going like this, and that creates steady, calm, mental clarity, less mood swings, less irritability, less problems with the external world. And this is getting to the point that he made, was he was saying, you know, what he recommends for people that are wishing to be more spiritual, more connected to consciousness, is a ketogenic approach, because you're not having these huge fluctuations in your life, and your brain is running at its capacity, because that's what the ketones fuel is our brain. Our brains are 70% fat. Why on earth would we have a low-fat diet when our brains need fat to run them? You know, and we're witnessing that across the Western world with Alzheimer's, dementia, children born with autism, and there's many factors that attribute to that. But it makes sense when you really take a 40,000-foot view of how our ancestors ate, why they ate that way. And as you know, I had somebody the other day, actually, it was a vegetarian or vegan, and they're like, oh, you can't be spiritual if you eat meat. I said, would you ever say that to an indigenous tribe here in Australia, or the Maori in New Zealand, or the Maasai in Africa, or the tribes in the Amazon? Would you go up to them and say, hey, listen, you're not doing too bad, but if you really want to be spiritual, you should cut out that meat thing. That ain't good for you.
I don't think it'd go down too well.
You'd be able to connect deeper with God, spirit, the land, nature, Maya. Like, yeah, when you hear these things, and then when you put a very common sense sort of point of view out there, you know, it can be very triggering, because people have beliefs. Yes. You know, and obviously everything that I'm saying is my belief, and I invite you to throw it all out if it doesn't resonate with you. But I also invite you to contemplate some of the things that I've said, especially the things that might have triggered you today or challenged you, because that's how we grow. That's how we have this beautiful way of sharing knowledge. You know, and what we're witnessing, as you know, is mass censorship that is coming through in so many different parts of the world at the moment. And why are they so afraid of people expressing opinions to one another? It's not like if I see a vegetarian, I want to attack them, because I'm like, go on your journey. You know, it's fantastic. If that works for you, if you've been a vegan for 20 years and you're in great health and you're thriving, fantastic. Like, keep doing what works for you, right? Yeah. If you have gone on that path and you're not thriving, then perhaps you may want to challenge or change your belief and look at something else. And the same thing for people that have been paleo or keto or carnivore. If it's working for you, fantastic. Continue on if you want to do it. If it's not working for you, then maybe look at plant-based or vegan or vegetarian as another option. That might work for you. Who knows? We are all individual. And the last thing I'll say on the dietary thing, as I said earlier about the digestion issue, is our beliefs run our program. Our programming is run from our deep-seated beliefs. And our beliefs are so freaking powerful that they can override and change how we function. You know, we see this dramatic remissions from cancer through belief systems. You know, we see people out there that smoke, drink, and tobacco isn't a bad thing. I take tobacco most days, but we see people out there that live to be 100 and they eat junk food and they drink themselves stupid and they smoke and they're having the best life. And we also see people that are very health conscious and motivated, and I don't drink tap water and I don't eat non-organic and this and that, and they check out when they're 60. So sometimes we have what I believe there's a blueprint for us, or some foundational principles that seem like common sense when we really look at it. Clean spring water, probably really good for us. Non-adulterated foods, probably very, very good for us rather than chemically laden and poison foods. Medications out there, are there natural options or are there toxic options? Common sense would probably lead you down one path. But in saying that, once we've got our blueprint foundational principles that we can look at, going to bed early, having a good night's sleep, we wake up feeling refreshed. When we don't do that, we don't feel so good. But once we know these sort of pillars for health, I think that's a really beautiful starting point. And then we can play in these areas and see. What I'm trying to say here is what works for me is through trial and error. What works for you is through your trial and error. And you are the best doctor that you will ever know. You are the best detective of your own life that you will ever know. So find the things and the things that work for you. And if eating a certain way really works for you, but doesn't work for other people, so be it. Own it. Love it.
Yes,
So, but when the censorship thing comes through, it's just like, what are they so scared of that they don't want people sharing information? That's pretty interesting, and I think we're at a great point in human history where that seems to be coming through. And I've had mates in the truth or freedom movement go, well, this is bad, mate. This is bad. I said, well, what if it isn't? What if this is actually what needs to happen at this particular point in time? Because you don't know what's going to happen in a generation or 2 or 3 from what this is. Look at the COVID thing over the last 3 years. When that happened, I was like, part of me was like, oh, this is awesome. This is great. Because as you were talking about before, more and more people waking up to it. And you think about it, like how many more people now are like, something's a little fishy there over the last few years. So we're into our 8th wave and they're not really locking us down, even though there's more people out there with this. And, so I'm grateful that that COVID thing happened, the mandates happened, everything, all of that happened, because I trust that everything is in balance and harmony. And as you're talking about a shift, there's definitely, like always, an emergence of evolution that comes from that, and an emergence of greater consciousness and expansion from that experience. So if censorship comes in, I mean, I've been deplatformed on Facebook and Instagram and Spotify. It didn't change my life, and it didn't go into victim mentality or anything like that. Maybe other people will get a taste of that and then see that maybe social media isn't that important for us. Maybe there's something that I've missed here along the way that, now I get to explore nature a bit more. Maybe I need to do this a bit more. Maybe I don't need to post every day 3 things on social media so that people see me. And so I'm sort of, I'm neutral to a lot of these things when they started to come into our awareness and into popular culture or mainstream adoption or implementation, because it wouldn't be happening if it wasn't perfect for us.
Sure, I hear you. And I guess summarizing what you've just said, we can have foundational principles for our life that support and help us. But it's really important to be able to examine your own belief systems about everything, and be able to be flexible and to adapt and change and not be stuck in, things that don't serve us. So thank you, Pete. It's been so wonderful to chat with you. And you've shared some really important information, and you've said it, you've expressed it so well. I think you should write a book. Have you written a book?
A few.
Have you? Okay, yes. Well, I'll leave all your contact details below for people. I know that you've got to go to another interview in a minute, but I'll leave all your information below if people want to contact you. Is your retreat open for people in Byron, for people to come and experience that with you?
Yeah, it's open to anybody. Anybody can come. Religious, medical belief, we're open. It's called Evolve Sanctuary. We run fasting retreats, wellness retreats, men's retreats, women's retreats, yoga retreats, Pilates retreats, cooking retreats, and a few other retreats. And we also book it out for groups if you want to have your own private retreat. And I've got a network called evolvenetwork.tv, which has 1,000 recipes, meal plans, all my documentaries that I've made, all the podcasts that are on there. That's $100 a year if anybody wants to check it out. It's a wealth of information, or not.
Fantastic.
I don't mind.
Oh, that's fantastic, Pete. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure that there'll be a lot of things that you've talked about today that will get people really thinking about their lives in different ways. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you, everybody. I love you all. And have a wonderful day whenever this goes to air. Love you all. See ya.
Thank you, Pete. Bye.
Bye, love.
Bye.